As we get to our age and we start recognizing that actually we've ended up building walls around ourselves that can sometimes, impact relationships, and actually we've learned to keep stuff in and push stuff down, and we recognize that isn't what we want our children to do. And my friends basically staged an intervention in a coffee shop, and they said, you're not okay, you need to go and speak to the doctor, we'll look after your toddler, take the baby in a carrier, off you go please. It was actually my birthday. Lovely. But actually I went and I spoke to the doctor, and he said, how are you bonding with the baby? And I just burst into tears. And this is why I love your account, because your parenting style just really, really resonates with where I've come to with mine. And it's been a real journey of kind of discipline over connection, so that the kind of on an old-fashioned naughty step, this is where we begun, the naughty step, the star charts, and where we've got to is vastly different to that.
And they just reach out, usually via DM, and say, I physically don't have the time, I've got no support, I've got 3 kids, that post is ridiculous. Have you been asked this question, and what answer do you have? And we're rolling. Welcome to the Parenting Truths podcast. Today I'm joined by psychotherapist, author, podcaster, speaker, and most importantly, mum of 3. I didn't realise you were a mum of 3 until we connected for this. Mum of 3. Have I forgotten anything off that list?
No, that's all good. That's all good. I think you've got it.
Anna Mathur. I forgot to drop your name in there.
That's the one.
So the reason I wanted to chat today, I think of all the accounts I follow, yours is probably on Instagram. This is probably the most well-balanced Instagram account I think I've come across. So you obviously provide an unfiltered insight into your life and the daily challenges as a parent, and then obviously you've got the podcast and you promote your books and things like that, and obviously more importantly you provide support and validation to mothers, obviously by providing the support to mothers in digestible social media content. More often than not, I'm sure the mothers are just pinging all of your posts to their partners. So it sort of helps me to understand what my wife's going through a lot more. I don't know if that's a conscious thing from your part.
No, it's not conscious. I just think it's so helpful, isn't it? I've done that before when I've read things or articles, and I've sent them on to my husband saying, this is it. This is explaining how I feel, or why I do what I do, or why I respond what I do. And I just think it's so helpful to understand each other a little bit more, because then we can find more compassion and understanding. So I love that people send the post on to their partners. That brings me so much joy, because I know how helpful that can be in my own relationship.
Yeah, I think one of the posts as well that me and my wife have been talking about for days, because she was mentioning it before you even posted about it, is you did a post around noise sensitivity, because we've got a baby who's 18 weeks and we've got a 5-year-old, and more recently my wife has been, and I've acknowledged it as well, that the house sort of just goes from 0 to 100 literally instantly. Everything could be calm, and then the telly's on, the pasta's boiling, the baby starts crying, Luke, our 5-year-old, might be struggling with his emotions, and then it all just gets a bit much. And your post around noise sensitivity really hit home with my wife, I think.
I think just understanding. I used to judge myself so much for finding it hard with all the noise, like even the happy noise, when the kids are actually happy but they're just flipping noisy, and then you've got the TV on, you've got, it's all going on. And I used to find it so irritating. I just used to want to stand in the kitchen and go, just be quiet. And I used to think, that's so not on. They're having a nice time. They're not doing anything wrong. This is okay. And I started taking that guilt that I was feeling and that kind of self-criticism, and just observing it and thinking, wait a minute, maybe I'm just reacting to the noise. And I just find these little realizations so helpful. And when you're tired and you've got a baby as well, your brain's just struggling to process what noise is safe and what isn't. And when there's lots of layers of noise, that can feel quite stressful for us. So really, we're just having a human response to the circumstances. And I just find that so helpful to know.
And obviously you're helping lots of parents by sharing this stuff. But do you, because I've noticed, I've only recorded 10 episodes of the podcast so far, that just talking about and vocalizing things relating to parenting is quite therapeutic, isn't it? Yeah. Do you notice that it's therapeutic for yourself when you share these sort of things?
Yeah, you know what, I have such a privilege being a therapist, and I get to see the behind the scenes, the messiness. I get to hear people's the complexity in their lives and the things that they've been through and the emotions that they have. So I have this real solid certainty and knowledge that I'm not alone in these things. I'm not alone in noise sensitivity. I know that because I hear it in other people. Or intrusive thoughts, for example, that's another one that people often have a lot of shame around. So I can vocalize these things with a real confidence that comes with being a practitioner that knows statistically I'm not alone. So I know that I'm going to share this, and I'm not going to get tons of people saying, Anna, what the heck are you on about? You know, you're a terrible parent, or there's something wrong with you. So I think there's that's really helpful to know. That there's a reason.
And before we dive in, we just chatted before I hit record, and turns out we're from a similar neck of the woods. So you're from Herefordshire, I'm from the Forest of Dean. What was your growing up? Because I grew up in a tiny little hamlet with a post box, and I think we had a phone box as well, which was quite cool. And I'd probably say my childhood was sheltered. I didn't really experience much until I went to university, and my world sort of like opened. Like I didn't get drunk until I was 18 for the first time, and things like that. So are you of a similar background, or how did you find growing up in Herefordshire?
Very much so. We had friends that used to come to the end of school ball on their tractors, because you could drive a tractor when you were, I can't remember what age you had to be. I think it was like 14 or something ridiculous like that. And we've got a telephone box that used to be where the fun was. We used to go and take 20p or 10p or however much it was and prank call people. And there was a call that we used to do. You need to check on your fridge or something because it's running away. Is your fridge running? You better go and catch it. I can't remember. We used to think it was absolutely hilarious, but that was the height of our rebellion. For me, the nearest town, proper city, was kind of 15 miles away, and I had a 45-minute bus ride into school. For me, it was all the busyness, all the chaos, very much within the house, within our home growing up. So whilst life was quite sedate in many ways outside the home, there was a lot of difficulty and trauma inside the home. And I think we lost my sister when she was 6 to cancer. So there was a lot of grief and a lot of loss. And actually what even more so than that was the way that people reacted and responded to and processed that loss. So that was, there was a lot going on in the home. And I think that very much kind of over the years sparked my interest in therapy.
And were you the older sister?
I was,
or the younger
oldest
sister?
Yeah, so there are three of us as well. I had a brother. I've got a brother who's 18 months younger than me. And then my sister was the younger one, the youngest. So and
how did you proactively do anything to deal with that traumatic loss how old were you at the time?
I was 10 when she died. For me, so for me it's very much all the stuff that I think myself and other mothers and other parents are now very much unpicking as adults, is the good girl, I've got to be good, I've got to do everything well, I don't want to cause any more drama or upset, I'll deal with stuff on my own. This kind of self-sufficiency, I think that we don't want to pass on to our children, because we get to our age and we start recognizing that actually we've ended up building walls around ourselves that can sometimes, impact relationships. And actually we've learnt to keep stuff in and push stuff down, and we recognize that isn't what we want our children to do. And so therefore we start unpicking this in ourselves. So I feel like we're this generation of parents who have one foot in the camp of keep calm, carry on, don't cry, be good. And actually we want our children to learn a different way. So we're trying to parent in a different way. And we're learning that actually we have to start parenting ourselves in a different way alongside that. So it's like double whammy. So my way of grieving was, I think, many other people's way of living and learning about emotion was just to be good and be neat and be calm and be happy.
I mean, a very different scenario, but a couple of years back we lost a baby that she had to give birth to, baby Noah. And at the time, our son was 3, and he was very much invested in the pregnancy. Obviously, Laura had a lovely bump, and we decided there and then just to tell him how it was and just journey with him through it. And I think that was probably the best decision we made, because even now, like, he talks about Noah regularly. If an animal dies, for example, he'll say, another animal for baby Noah to play with. And by making that decision to actually not shy away and just park it, I think it's probably helped him from a developmental point of view. So it's tough. It is tough, but parents, I guess, have to make these decisions, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And in making that decision, it may well be that one or both of you was trying to do things differently, perhaps, to how it might have been done when you were children. It might have been try and protect the other child at all cost. Don't let them know what's going on. Hide your emotions. Cry in private. Maybe tell them when they're a little bit older and perhaps they can deal with it better. We're wanting to do things differently. I feel we're wanting to show our children that it's okay to feel emotions. We're wanting them to learn to have some confidence that if they value those emotions, they come and they go and they ebb and they flow, and they're, we're not just going to be stuck feeling one way forever. So yeah, I think that's great.
When I was writing my notes for this episode, I've literally turned them on their head, because over the last 7 days something's blown up on social media. Weirdly, Laura was just talking about it a minute ago, and that's the mum ribbon movement. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that and how you sort of came up with the idea and how it's exploded essentially across social media. I've just seen that you're in the Metro as well. They've covered the movement. So what motivated that for you?
It was a moment, and I was with my 3 kids, and I was in the high street, and one of my kids really struggles with kind of regulating his emotions. So there's often kind of meltdowns quite publicly. Sometimes it can be quite challenging. And I was walking down the road and I was doing my deep breaths and I was trying not to cry publicly. And I just looked around me and I thought, man, I wish I could see a friend. I was just searching for someone in the high street that I knew, just to go and get a hug off them and just get some kind words. And there wasn't anyone. And I saw other families and I saw other parents, and I thought, man, I wish that they would come and say something to me. But I bet you full well they feel how I feel sometimes, which is, oh my gosh, she's clearly having a hard time, but I don't want to overstep the mark. I don't want to offend her. So we just stay a step back. And I think it was this idea of, wouldn't it be amazing if there was some way of identifying that actually I'm open to you coming to be kind to me. Like, you don't have to worry, I'm not going to bite your head off, I'm not going to yell at you for being patronizing, and I'm also open to you coming and asking me for whatever it is, whether you need some wipes or you need some kind words or just a nod of, I get it. And it's kind of just gone a little bit wild. We'll see how it goes down the line. I think a lot of people need to jump on board for it to be a thing. So it's just an encouragement that people tie a ribbon onto their bag, and that's a little sign to say, you can be kind to me and I'm up for being kind to you. Yeah. And the response has been amazing in the sense that the biggest reaction is relief. Oh my goodness, now I know that I've got permission to go and be kind to someone. And I honestly thought that people would just be delighted, thinking, oh, now I know that there are places I can go and ask for help. But actually, people feel so worried about supporting others and how it will be received that they might find it patronizing or just kind of, too much, that they hold back. And I thought, this fear is literally dismantling this village that we often use inverted commas for, like the village. Yeah. That there are so many people willing to offer support and kindness, but there's so much fear. And because
it's hard to know and be aware of where people's boundaries are, aren't they? Obviously, you don't want to just dive in and appear to be some sort of know-it-all, but if you do see that ribbon on the bag, then you can just maybe just step into their space and see what you can literally do to help. Because like thinking about it, there's so many there's so many examples personally and seeing other people where it would have probably been helpful if someone just came in and offered some support, be it helping with the little one or just some emotional support. So yeah, such a simple but effective idea, and I think it just needed someone like yourself to vocalize it, and I think it's just going to continue to grow.
I think so often we look around us and we just see strangers, when actually we all know what it feels like to feel helpless or hopeless or at a loss or stuck or lonely. We really do. We all know in different circumstances what that feels like. So we can all connect far more than we feel like it. And random acts of kindness are all very well and good, but often when we need the kindness most, it's, we need it in that moment. And it's not necessarily a moment someone is going to feel prompted to do something. So it's just giving a permission, really.
I recorded an episode with James Hunt from Stories About Autism. He's got Tommy and Jude, who are both non-verbal, and we actually talked about this thing, like he's always put in situations, just a simple thing like going to the play park, for example. There's always situations that arise where he feels judged, and more often than not, people will look over if there's a situation that he's struggling with and judge. But a few times that have lived long in his memory are when people have actually come over and helped him. Yeah, they're quite powerful, aren't they? Because it does take something. It does feel risky when you offer that, and sometimes you can be rebuffed. I've had loads of stories where people feel like they're never going to offer help again because this one time they did, and the mum was really rude to them. And I think there have been times in my life, and I'm not sure whether this resonates for you, where I've been dealing with my own feelings of, I feel like a failure, I feel like everyone's judging me. And then if someone comes and offers help, it's almost like proof that everyone else thinks I'm a failure, everyone else thinks I can't do this, everyone else is judging me. And actually, that would have been really hard to receive. I probably would have taken offence, but that's me. That's where I'm at in that moment. That's not the other person. It might be if that person offered me help a week later, I might take it with open arms. So I think sometimes when we have been rebuffed, it's important to remember that's more about where that person was in that moment and how able they felt to receive that than you and your offer. And I think it's in those moments things can escalate quickly as a parent. You start questioning yourself. For example, if you're trying to do some shopping and your little one just isn't feeling it and they're struggling with their emotions, you see all the other kids around you, filling up their shopping baskets, nicely, for example. Or if you're at the beach, and all you want to do is just relax and sit down with your little one, but they're struggling, and all the other families are playing bat and ball and building sandcastles. It can escalate, and you can just be sat there thinking, what am I doing wrong? But if someone was to come into your space, then it just validates that, all of these people don't have isn't smooth sailing for them all of the time. It's really comforting, isn't it? I have a really stark moment, a memory of a moment that happened recently, and we were in the car driving home, and my middle child, who struggles, he was kicking off, and I mean kicking, thrashing, screaming. We just couldn't drive. It wasn't safe to drive, so my husband pulled in to a pub car park, and it was Sunday lunchtime, and all these people were going from their car into the pub car park, into the pub for their Sunday lunch, and I was sat on the gravel floor just aside in the car park, holding my screaming 6-year-old who was thrashing, and I wasn't even looking, to be honest, at their faces, because I knew that people would be looking at me, because it was quite a spectacle. But I think the other thing that's been so powerful for me, that my children have taught me, is that other people just don't know. If they judge, it's because they just don't understand. They don't know what that feels like. They don't know your child. They don't know what you've been through that morning or what that child's struggles are. So actually, I just feel so much freer to sit there on the gravel floor with my screaming child and think, you know what, if you judge me, that's because you don't know. And I do have people in my life who do know and who do understand and who do know what it feels like. And their feedback is really where it's at for me. But I think a lot of people don't necessarily have that confidence. So I just hope that I can that it rubs off a bit on other people in these moments and these interactions, that hopefully will be more
common occurrences.
And it'd be nice in a few months' time, as more of these ribbons are placed on bags, that hopefully stories will start surfacing of people connecting, and I'm sure you'll start seeing that on social media in a few months' time. So hopefully it continues to grow, and more parents. I know my wife's sourcing a ribbon right now, so
that's brilliant. Yeah, and I get messages saying I'm a grandmother, or I'm a nanny, or I'm a childminder, and I'd love to be involved. And I'm like, you know what, if you've got like a maternal bone in your body, and this will count for loads of men as well, go for it. Do it. And also, we don't need permission to be kind to each other. You don't have to identify with the movement to just step out a little bit more and be kind to each other. So we'll see where it goes.
Now, you've got so much, as a podcaster, you've got so much content out there focusing on supporting other parents through their journey. So I just wanted to chat to you with your mum hat on about your own parenting journey. So if you're able to maybe take us back to before you became a parent, sort of where were you in your life when you and your partner decided, right, let's kick off and start trying for a family?
Oh, that's a good question. Where were we? You know what? It feels like such a long time ago. We're going back kind of 9-10 years now. So I was living in a flat in Tooting in London. I was training to be a psychotherapist. I was also working other bits and pieces of jobs to fund that. I worked on Sainsbury's head office switchboard for a while. I absolutely loved that. It was amazing. It was just so fun, the conversations that I'd have with the other women there. So whilst I was doing my saving for my training and doing that along the way, we decided, I think we'd always wanted children. That was always kind of joint part of our hope for our future. We both were one of three, so we hoped that we might maybe have three, and it happened very, very quickly. It was almost a bit of a shock how quickly it happened. I think I'd spent many years trying not to get pregnant. I'd kind of built it up that it could take years, and I think I had friends that it did take a long time, so it was a bit of a shock to find out that we were pregnant very quickly. And then we moved down to Surrey because both of us were kind of brought up in fairly rural areas, so we wanted to move out of the city, and had a very textbook experience of pregnancy and a newborn, which was lovely, and it actually really set me up to confidently plough on and think, let's do this again. So by his first birthday, I was pregnant again. And this was such a wholly different experience of everything that really humbled me, because I thought the reason it all went so well was because I was a really good parent and that I just was really natural at it, and everything, the fact that my kid was fairly straightforward was entirely a reflection on me and how good a parent I was. And then I was totally humbled by the next experience. I had horrendous sickness. I had my appendix out at 11 weeks pregnant. It was just, I know, I didn't even know they could do that, but apparently they have to. And and he had silent reflux, so he basically screamed solidly, so nothing worked that had worked before. No shushing, no swaddling, no nothing. And again, I thought this was a reflection on me. I thought, well, I must be doing something wrong this time. And his reflux went undiagnosed for 6 months. So I was chronically sleep deprived to the point of hallucinating. I remember a couple of the hallucinations, like I could barely string a sentence together, and I was very much, don't worry about me, it's fine, I'm just going to try harder. I wouldn't even let my husband stay in the bedroom. He just slept in the spare room because I hated him seeing me find it so hard and fail in my eyes. And so I kind of wore this mask of don't worry, it's all fine, when actually it really wasn't fine. And I was feeling, I definitely had postnatal depression, horrendous intrusive thoughts, and just quite frankly didn't know how I was going to make it through this kind of newborn period, all whilst trying to look after he wasn't even 2 at that point, my older child. And it really stripped me back completely. It made me realise that I didn't have this, and actually that wasn't failure, that was just humanness. It made me really address some of those things that we spoke about earlier around kind of perfectionism and self-sufficiency, and I can do this on my own, and this is my job, and I'm meant to cope, and actually made me realise that I needed people, and that wasn't weakness. That was like survival and community and how it's meant to be. So yeah, it was really rough, but it taught me lessons for life, and I feel very grateful for what came out of that. Yeah. And then so we did decide we wanted a third, but that was definitely a much more conscious decision. But I was in a totally different place mentally. I was open to help and open to letting people know how I felt, and open to whatever I needed really in order to be healthy mentally.
How did you pull through? Because we've obviously got an 18-week-old, and I'd say, firstly, because it was 4.5 years between Luca and Mia, you quickly forget the newborn days and the intensity of the lack of sleep. And with losing Noah and the fact that Mia was actually our 7th pregnancy, Laura struggled quite a lot with anxiety through the pregnancy, which was tough, but also in the early weeks with Mia, or months with Mia, we sort of hunkered down. And Laura had lots of intrusive thoughts and health anxiety. Is Mia still breathing? What does this mean? What does that mean? And things just escalate out of control quite quickly. And she's seeking help, and it's petering out a little bit, and she's getting coping strategies for when those thoughts come in. But how did you pull through with an almost 2-year-old to look after in the depths of that no sleep, which is tough, isn't it, when there's absolutely no schedule? You've just got to roll with what the baby wants 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, with your partner, I would definitely say that when there's been loss and there's been trauma, then anxiety, it's really hard to tell yourself the worst won't happen when actually it already has, and you've lived through that pain and that loss and that grief. So it's so understandable that her anxiety has been a challenge for her, and I'm really glad that she's getting support. As for my experience, how did I cope? Not very well. It was awful. I just cried the whole time. I would try and hide it. I'd put on big sunglasses. I'd reapply mascara as I was crying, and it was a terrible time. And I think I just wanted everyone to think I'd got this. And the real shift and change came when, instead of saying I've got this, don't worry about me, when clearly everyone was a bit like, Anna, you're really not okay. But I wasn't ready for them to see that. I wasn't ready to let them see how broken I was. But I got to a point where I was struggling to function, and my husband works long hours, so often he was gone by the time the kids got up, and then home after they were asleep. So he just saw the dregs of me. I was just, it was rubbish. And I remember this moment where my friends basically staged an intervention in a coffee shop, and they said, you're not okay. You need to go and speak to the doctor. We'll look after your toddler. Take the baby in a carrier. Off you go, please. It was actually my birthday. Lovely. But actually I went and I spoke to the doctor, and he said, how are you bonding with the baby? And I just burst into tears. And then what they did was they really stepped up how often the health visitor came, because she came once, and I was just, I couldn't put on the happy face. I just couldn't. I was an absolute wailing mess, and actually it felt incredibly vulnerable for people to see my brokenness. But it was a turning point. It was a turning point for the rest of my life. I really had to learn that I needed people, and I wasn't okay, and I needed to let other people know that, so that I could be okay. And that people stepped in, people that were waiting on the sidelines, just waiting for me to kind of wave the white flag of surrender. And that's what I kind of want to encourage in other parents, is this knowledge and this truth that we need each other, and that's not failure. And it's hard because it is hard, and it's not a reflection on how good loving a parent we are. It's just a lot sometimes.
And without your friends identifying that you needed help and stepping in, do you think you would have ever reached a point personally to voluntarily seek help, or is it hard to say? It's hard to say.
I was definitely moving towards that. I was, that, or maybe I wouldn't be alive. I honestly don't know. Things just felt so scary and dark and hopeless, and there was so much shame attached to that, because I was, you know, I'd look at my children, I think, you're meant to be the best thing that ever happened to me, and part of my brain knows that you are, but also I can't cope with how I feel. And I think it probably would have just spiraled further until I waved that flag of surrender. But it's just so ironic that I'm a therapist, you know, I was there supporting other people, but this was how tightly I'd grasped onto that. I've got to, you know, I've got this covered, I've got the tools to fix myself, therefore it must be me that does that. And a heart surgeon can't perform their own heart surgery, right? Like, being a heart surgeon doesn't mean that you're not going to have issues with your own heart. And there's a lot of humility in that, I think. And it's a really valuable lesson to learn, a painful one.
And have you faced any, obviously that sounds like the single biggest challenge you've had since becoming a parent, but what other challenges have you faced along your parenting journey, would you say?
Yeah, so this is why I love your account, because your parenting style just really, really resonates with where I've come to with mine. And it's been a real journey of kind of discipline over connection. So that kind of on old fashioned naughty step, this is where we began, the naughty step, the star charts, and where we've got to is vastly different to that. It's connection, it is compassion, it is looking beyond the behavior and trying to connect with the need, and just validating emotion, and just trying to calm myself so I can be more present rather than reactive. And I would say that way of parenting is way harder. It requires so much more, so much more self-parenting, so much more meeting of our own needs. And I'm really challenged in that in the day-to-day because of the challenges that one of my kids has. So I need to do everything I can in my life to give myself as much of myself. So I'm really protective over my sleep. I've like massively cut down drinking alcohol recently because I recognized that was impacting my sleep and therefore how calm I could be. I have really intentional conversations with friends who have similar challenges. It takes a lot to parent in a way that I like to parent. And that's transformed my approach to self-care and taking time for myself and putting boundaries around going for walks and stuff like that. Because I'm like, my kids need me to do this. It's not selfish. It's love. So those challenges that I'm facing day to day have really reframed how I view some of these things. Yeah,
I think it is, parenting that way can be exhausting. And I think those traditional approaches you mentioned, the naughty step and things like that, are great because you've got a sense of control, like your child's misbehaving, right? You sit there until you're ready to come back, and you've got control over that, haven't you? Whereas it can feel like borderline permissive if you don't do that. And I know people have seen me and think, and family members have seen me and think maybe I'm a bit too lenient with my little one, but now they just stop asking because they've seen the dad vibes and they sort of get it.
Yes, good. It's an education. It really is. Yeah. Definitely, for all of us. I know, constant learning.
So you touched there on self-care, and I had one question I wanted to ask you, because I'm always asked this question when I talk about self-care and I never have the answer. And it's from parents that are isolated, they've got multiple children, their partners work long hours. So if I say, you know, to parent the way you need to parent, take care of yourself first, put your needs first, and they just reach out, usually via DM, and say, I physically don't have the time, I've got no support, I've got 3 kids, that post is ridiculous. Have you been asked this question, and what answer do you have?
So my answers are fundamentally first of all, make sure that you're meeting your basic needs. You know, so many people are dehydrated, they're not nourishing themselves, they're not eating properly, they're not eating well, they're not moving when they can. You know, are you meeting those fundamental basic needs? And so often we're not. You know, we're putting off drinking water because we're making another packed lunch. Actually, just drink the water, or just have the water. I've got a bottle of water all the time next to me because I recognised that I was getting headaches every day. This is a couple of years back. And someone said, are you dehydrated? And so I started drinking more water and the headaches went away. So I would encourage people to think, are you meeting your basic needs? And when it comes to support network, online, offline, however you find it, you need 2 to 3 people in your life who know how you are. And that needs to be prioritized, even if it's voice notes to your mate who can't reply until tomorrow. Like, just make sure that you are connecting with 2 to 3 people. And as for the extra bits, sometimes we have to be massively creative with how we fit them in. For me, my kids, they have these grow clocks. You know, they come out of their room at 7 a.m. They might draw and whatever beforehand, but in our house, the day starts at 7. So I get up early and I do whatever. I wake up at 6. I have an hour to do whatever I want. It might be yoga. I might have a bath. I might lie in bed and read a book. I might do a sweaty workout, but that is my time. And I think, what do I need to do today that gives me something more of myself? So sometimes we just have to be really, really creative in how we do that. And sometimes we look at other people doing the spa days and doing the walks and doing the marathons or whatever it is, and we think, well, there's no way I can do that. Well, what is good for you, and how can you break it down so that it's a little 2-minute chunk that you can slot into your day somewhere? Sometimes we need to make swaps. You know, we think, I can't get a chance to rest, but we're spending loads of time on social media, and we're adding over, you know, stuff for our brain to process that is slowly exhausting us and chipping away at our self-esteem. What can you swap that with? So instead of doing that, you're doing 2 deep breaths, or you're picking up a book and reading a single page, you know, something that is more nourishing to replace something that you're already doing. So there are lots of different things, and I think sometimes it's something is always better than nothing. And when we start doing the little somethings, sometimes we start to realize that actually it's not that we can't do some of these things, it's just that we haven't been prioritizing them because we haven't felt deserving of reading a book instead of doing another load of washing that could actually maybe just wait half an hour. So there's a few different things to think about.
Yeah, I think the reframing of self-care is really important, because traditionally we see self-care as the spa days, the night away at the hotel, but literally if you can have these bite-sized things. So for me, for example, I would class creating an Instagram post as self-care. And I might do that with my baby in my arms when they're sleeping, and I might just do that, and I feel really refreshed after that. I don't necessarily need to go on social media to do that, because obviously then you get locked into that loop of scrolling through reels and it's 4 hours later.
Yep.
Or whatever.
We'll be there.
So yeah, if you try and find out what interests you and break it down to small bite-sized chunks, you can dive into these little bite-sized pieces of self-care. It doesn't have to be the big spa days. Yeah,
and maybe there will be a time down the line when you can go for the run and you can do and engage in other things. And I think sometimes we're looking at other people and they're in different situations, different circumstances. They have different support networks. They're at a different stage in life. Perhaps when their kids were a little bit older, there were times there was no way I could get up at 6 and do anything without being accompanied by, you know, at least one other kid. And it felt like it would never come. That time would never come where I could generally predictably have that time, but now it is. So what can we do to get a little bit of what we need in the stage and season that we're currently in?
And I wanted to ask you quickly, because this is also another question I'm asked, is about the relationship people have with their partner and how that evolves when they become parents. Because I have conflicting DMs, one from mothers and then partners, be it dads, and they're always a little bit taken aback of how their relationship's been impacted since they became a parent. So certainly for my wife and I, like, we co-slept with Luca for the best part of 5 years. So he was in our bed for the best part of 5 years. It was 2.5 years before we ever spent a night away from him. So we sort of made that conscious decision together to, you know, maybe allow the relationship or that one-on-one quality time to take a back seat. But when you've got two polarizing views, maybe a dad isn't aligned with mum's expectations, it can be quite detrimental. Have you come across that before? Gosh, yeah. And how has your personal relationship evolved since you became a parent?
I think it's just constant learning together, and you know, often there can be conflicting conflicting stances, and I think it can be really helpful if you feel like you've got a conflicting stance with your partner, and that, you know, it can drive a bit of a wedge, especially if it means a lot to you. It's sharing kind of third party information. So with parenting stuff, as I've said, our parenting stance has really changed, and a lot of that is been to do with the kind of the information that I've been consuming. So I've shared stuff with him and spoken with him and taken time actually to sit together and look at things together and talk about them, because otherwise you're reacting in the moment. Perhaps your partner does something that is quite opposing to your parenting stance, so you kind of jump on them and you say this isn't right, and then there's an argument. But actually taking it away from those moments where it's quite emotionally loaded and just trying to allocate some time to sit together when maybe you'd be just browsing Netflix, to talk about it together, because it's really important. It's like if you had two people running a business in a totally different way, it just wouldn't work. So to feel collaborative is important for the relationship as well. You feel like you're a partnership rather than you're both kind of working against each other. So how can you take out any accusatory language, like when you do this, this happens, it's like I feel. So take ownership of your emotional responses and know that we're all just learning, and we all have different histories, and we've been parented differently. So it's tricky sometimes. It really, really is.
And you do need to prioritise that time together to reconnect one-on-one without the kids, as hard as it may be. I remember me and Laura, when we were happy to leave Luca, used to go out for meals in local town Chepstow, but it was very much we'd rush out, we'd basically inhale the meal and rush back to send my mother-in-law on her way. So what we did is we started doing date days. So literally 3 hours in the afternoon could be canoeing down the Wye or cycling to like Tintern or something like that, and we had far more fun doing that than going out for the meals. So that's a good little tip for parents to take away.
I love that. Another one for us recently has been no phones when we're both lying in bed, like at night time. Books, because I just started feeling like a bit resentful, because I'm on my phone so much for my work, and then my husband would be there, he'd be sending an email like 10:30, and then he'd be browsing the sport, and I just used to feel like he had the world in his hands, and our room, it was like the world was still in our room. And so we made an agreement that once we were both in bed, we would not go on our phones, we'd just read books. And that feels so much nicer, just knowing that you're in a little bubble together and you've shut the world out, and you're both available to talk or whatever. And I just find that really helpful. It's been one tiny little tweak that has just removed a little bit of that resentment and made us feel a bit more together.
Yeah, we might try that, because often it might be of an evening someone's slightly more invested in something on their phone, so the other one is sort of judging the other one from afar, but then the person judging yesterday probably was super invested in something.
I know.
And then it becomes a bit point scorey, and it can escalate. So that's a good tip. Just literally park the phones, whatever you're looking at. Probably
can, and that's the thing. It probably can wait. Do I really need to know what the weather's doing tomorrow afternoon before I go to bed? Do I really need to, find out who Katie Price is currently married to? No, I do not need to know that right now. And I think that's the pull of the digital, is that it's literally engineered to keep us there. It's engineered to have us moving towards it and reaching for it. And sometimes an unanswered question or a bit of wondering, I wonder, or I wonder, wonder what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. It's okay just to wonder stuff and not have answers. It's actually really good for our brains not to just constantly be bombarded with information. It's good to wonder.
That's a good point, because quite recently our 5-year-old has started saying, we could Google that. So obviously he's picked that up from me and Laura. So we need to work on that.
Yes, well, I had to Google the tallest man living yesterday because I could, and he wanted to know.
Okay.
And instead of just wondering, lying there in the bed and thinking, I wonder what would he be as tall to reach the ceiling? Would he? Wonder how big his hands were. It was, Mummy, you can go and find out. Where's your phone? Go and find out. So I did.
So before we close out, I've just got 3 quick fire questions that I'm asking every guest. You don't need to overthink them too much. So question 1 is, knowing what you know now, what parenting advice would you give yourself before you became a parent?
Seek connection before any remote correction. So connection, always go first. Yeah. Seek that.
What's the one thing you feel you need to work on as a parent?
Always patience. Always doing anything I can in my day to give me a little bit more patience.
And finally, what's the best thing about being a parent?
Oh, just looking at them. I just keep looking at them. It sounds so ridiculous and thinking, you're real. You're like real little person. You're incredible. Just tapping into the wonder of the mundane moments and just letting my heart just be blown up by the incredibleness of the boring stuff.
Yeah, me and Laura do that all the time. It could be Lucas sitting on the grass, literally picking a bit of grass, and one of us could go, have you seen that? Unbelievable.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. I say to my kids,
look what we've made.
I'm just stand there in the kitchen and go, oh my goodness. And they're like, what? I'm like, just you three. Incredible. And they just think they think I'm ridiculous, but they'll absorb it. I hope. Yeah. I love it.
Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time is very valuable, and I've probably got through about 20% of my notes, so I think there's definitely
we need a series,
room there for you to come back on, maybe a bi-weekly episode.
I'm up for
but
it.
Thank you for your time anyway.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Tom. I absolutely am so appreciative of all that you put out there. I find it so affirming and thought-provoking, and just needed. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, I'll let you get back to your busy day, because I thought I just saw your Instagram story and I thought that was your weekly update, but that was your day.
I'll pack it in. I'll pack it in. Yeah, childcare time. Get it in there. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me, and we'll touch base soon.